My name is Mary Sabatino, and I'm the Vice President here at Galerie Lelong. And on behalf of everyone at the Gallery, I'd like to welcome you to our 22nd Dialogues with the amazing artist, Pinaree Sanpitak, and the amazing curator, Cecilia Alemani. So I'm honored to have them, and I'd like to just tell you a little bit about both of them. For the full biography, you can look on our website. So for over 3 decades, Pinaree has explored, or I'll just wait while these people sit down. Great, I love a full house. We have to get more chairs. So for over 3 decades, Pinaree has explored her sense of being in the world, emanating from and in dialogue with the body and experience. She deploys a concise vocabulary of signifiers in a sensual and minimal style. She reduces artistic language to its essence, which creates a joyful experience of feeling and sensing, widening and engaging the body in many dimensions. After the birth of her son, she centered representation of the breast in her practice, as you can see here, as a way to epitomize the beauty in the experience, where other forms are also in her lexicon, and there are many other references as well. The main themes of spirituality, nurturing, womanhood, and more broadly, of how one is human in the world. Pinaree is one of Asia's most important artists, I say Thailand's most important female artist, and her works have been exhibited in many museums and biennials, including the main exhibition of the 59th Venice Biennial entitled The Milk of Dreams, which was curated by Cecilia. Other exhibitions and public projects have taken place, such as the Bangkok Art Biennial, the Hanker Village Monument, the Winter Garden at Brookfield Place, Toledo Museum of Art, and the Sherman Contemporary Art Center in Sydney. Cecilia Alemani is an Italian curator based in New York City. Since 2011, she has been the Donald Mullen Jr. Curator of the Highline, which is a public art program in New York City. She is also the curator of the upcoming 12th Site Santa Fe Biennial, scheduled to open in June 2025. And we have some other representation from Santa Fe here. From 2020 to 2022, she was artistic director of the 59th Venice Biennale. And I think anyone who has seen that show has images burned in their mind. And it was very much centered on women's, which is incredibly appropriate to have you here. In September of this year, she curated the exhibition Tetsuya Ishida, My Anxious Self, at the first American retrospective of the Japanese painter. She organized Making Their Mark, which has just opened in the Berkeley Art Museum, where Pinaree is also included in that show, which showcases the works of more than 80 female artists. In January 2024, she curated Anu Poder, Space for My Body, the first solo exhibition presented outside Estonia of the artist. She has also been the inaugural curator of Art Basel Cities in Buenos Aires, that was fun, in 2018, and was the curator of the Italian pavilion of the 57th Venice Biennial. Over the past 20 years, she has an incredible expertise of commissioning and producing significant projects. So after these two wonderful people engage in their own dialogue, I'm going to open it up to the audience. Please join me in welcoming them.
Thank you, Mary, for the kind introduction, and thank you all for being here. I hope you can hear me well. I speak loud. If I'm too loud, just wave. But I'm extremely excited to be here with Pinaree for hopefully a very lively conversation. As Mary said, we'll talk for about 40 minutes, and then we'll open up for questions from the audience, so please hold them until the end. But we want you to participate. So. As you heard, I had the honor of working with Pinaree in 2022 when I organized the 59th edition of the Venice Biennale in Italy, and it was a wonderful experience, although it was also in the midst of COVID, and so we actually never met before, which was really sad, but that was the reality of that project. And the show, of course, was, it's a vast exhibition, but Pinaree's work was in a very special section of the exhibition that looked at the sort of ideas and forms and shapes of the vessel both as a utilitarian container, but also the vessel, like the body as a vessel in many different declinations. And you can see why, of course, her work was so relevant for that presentation. And for those of you who went, you might remember she had this spectacular wall that went all the way up to the ceiling in the Galerie, in the Arsenale, in this beautiful 16th century building where paintings were constellating these gorgeous walls. But now we're here in New York, a couple of years after that exhibition, and it's been really like breathtaking to walk through the gallery and see the intensity of these canvases and the power that they have as you look at them in person. And so I want to just basically start with the genesis of this exhibition. If you can just give us a little bit of an introduction on this show, and when was your last show here, and how this show came about.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Cecilia. This is my first show with Galerie Lelong, and actually the works started from the works I did as a selection for the wall for Cecilia's Venice Biennale. No, thank you for giving me a wall.
A very
it
tall
was a 6 by 7 meter wall, and you specified that it was going to be a salon hang. So from those 5 paintings, I made about 12 to 13 paintings to select from. And once we confirmed on the topic of the vessel and the body, you gave me carte blanche, you gave me a free hand on the topics because it's what I've been doing. And so from those 13 paintings, there are 2 of them here, which are those womanly bodies in the back there. But then at the final selection, we didn't include them. We chose a different palette of the reds, of the ochre, the blacks. And so I wanted to continue with that series. And when Mary contacted me to work together to show here, that was the vision I had as a start for the show, and that's why the palette of this exhibition became like this.
Mm-hmm. Very different from what was in Venice.
Yes.
Which was and tell us about the title of the exhibition, Fragile Narratives, and I think that's sort of evokes a bit of a polarity that exists in your work between sort of the fragility or the this immateriality that often comes across your canvas, but also the strength of the imagery that you use and the power of the female body. And so I don't know if that's something that you're looking for, but I feel like that kind of change of temperature and change of feeling is very present in your work.
Sometimes titles comes before the work, sometimes it comes after. And for this show, I was painting and making these works a year ago. So I had a body of work, and then looking at the work, I think of them as stories, as narratives, with layers, and even though they're you can say they're like 3 bodies of work, 3 chapters of work, including the kinetic works in the other room. They talk about the fragile existence of our beings, also playing with the materials I use in the works, as the silk, the silk sheets, the mawata sheets in those womanly bodies, or the pencil marks, or these feathers. If you notice, I used these white peacock feathers in the work also. So it plays with the word, and it's not about something that's going to break. It's something fragile but resilient.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's my next question was about the materials themselves, which is they're so precious, meaning they really need to be seen in person, because in photographs, of course, they're beautiful in photographs, don't get me wrong, but the texture and the material of everything that you use to the smallest detail is so important. So I'd like to hear you talk a bit more about the materials that you choose, not just for their aesthetic qualities, but also if they have another meaning. For instance, the silk that you use in this beautiful series of paintings behind you, mawata, right? Besides the texture and the textural quality of it, does it also have another meaning for you?
I work with a wide range of materials, and how I use it, or when I use it, it really depends. For instance, with this origami piece of, maybe you have seen it in an installation called Anything Can Break. It's a hanging installation with sound sensors, and you walk underneath and you trigger sound, and you're covered by these thousands of paper origami in the shape of cube with wings. I encountered it, I was given it at a restaurant in Tokyo, and I was so intrigued with it. It's not a piece that I made. It's something that's children make in Japan, but if it's a cube only, it's nothing to me. But then it's with wings. I was just so drawn to it. I kept folding it for several years before I was able to release it, to find a way to insert into my language. So going back to like the word narratives, it's like I feel these are language components of lexicons that I create, that comes from a very personal viewpoint, but it's open up for interpretation. So with materials, it's something that I really have to be drawn to. I have to feel it. And
do you do a lot of experimentation with material, or like something with this silk, for instance? Did you know that it was going to come out exactly the way it came, with all these details and imperfection? And what is the space you allow for the material to reveal itself versus you controlling it? What is the chance factor?
Well, actually, this series came from our conversation, our Zoom conversation for the Venice Biennale, because they're based on these sculptures I made in 1998, but they're made from the mulberry bark. It's the first pounding of the bark before they're made into paper pulp, and they look fragile, but they're very durable, and you can just sew them into different shapes. I made about 4 or 5 sculpture installations with them, but I knew that I love to collage, I love to glue things on, but I knew that wouldn't work on canvas. And then when we discussed about this, I had these mawata in the studio, because I used them in the installation, the roof, at the Winter Gardens at Brookfield Place in 2017. They were I made like a canopy around the palm trees, and this is, I had to source flame retardant materials for that public space, and apparently Mawata is one of them. And so I had it in the studio, so I thought, okay, let me try, and it worked.
And when you showed it in the Winter Garden, was it just the silk, or was there?
No, it was mixed together. It was mixed together with building materials, other kinds of plastics, and yeah.
And I think it's a very good metaphor. No? Sometimes you think of silk as something extremely delicate, but it's actually a very, very sturdy material, right? So, as I look at these paintings, I can't help but thinking about the human body or the female. I see skins, I see sinuous shapes. I don't mean that they're figurative in a more traditional way, but certainly the idea and the reference to the female body or to the human body is very present in your work. Can you talk a little bit about how it manifests in this series, which is in a way a little bit more abstract than a more traditional rendition of a breast or other elements that you have, in that composition, for instance?
Well, these are abstract wobbly bodies. That's what I call it. And it arrived, let me see, about 7-8 years since I started the breastworks. A lot of people know about my works from my breastworks started in 1994, 2 months after I gave birth to my son. I chose the breasts as part of the female body as to make it like a monument for womanhood, not just only motherhood. They were all single, upright, made in pastels. I was breastfeeding at that time. I breastfed Sean for 2 years. So it was something very practical and very focused, very straight to the point. And then reality hit. It became elongated, turned upside down, and then the bodies appear. And I thought I would move on to something else because it's kind of like it comes full body. But then I thought it's so fascinating, and I wanted to look at it in every angle, in every perspective, in every material possible. So then it became, and then I made the sculptural womanly bodies. I work between 2 and 3 dimensionals all the time, so it creates a dialogue between the works itself and to me. So that was how the body became more abstract, and then after that it became like a vessel, an open vessel. To give, to receive. The breast vessel came later when I started the breast stupa cookery project in 2005, because it became an actual vessel to receive, and to give food. So it's you can also look at my work kind of like a self-portrait. Also, it comes from a very personal viewpoint. It comes from my experience, and although along the years it started from the female, from me, but then I think along the way it has crossed gender, and it's about humans.
Yeah, and the next question I wanted to ask was kind of to unpack the lexicon of your symbols and your recurring forms and shapes. You mentioned the stupa, but also the offering vessel and the breast. While they share the certain anatomy, they're also very different. And so I'm just curious to hear you talk about these different elements and their meaning and significance for you, and how you sort of alternate them on your work.
Well, the breast stupa I coined that term in 2001, incorporating the sensual and the sacred together. It was from this hanging silk installation, which I take a perfect woven piece of silk and I pull threads out from the middle, and then it forms like this, what I call breast stupor. And they're in monotones, natural tones. They hang about, each piece is about 5 meters, and you can walk around it. So it becomes kind of like a sanctuary. And at that time of my life, it was like I felt more grounded. And by pulling the threads out, it's also a meditative experience. I was born a Buddhist, and I live in Bangkok, Thailand, but immediately on my birth certificate it says I'm a Buddhist, but I'm not religious in that way that to meditate or to go to the temples
But maybe we can explain what a stupa is, because I don't know if everybody knows what a stupa is.
A stupa is a monument in the Buddhist temples that keeps relics, Buddha relics, or you can keep your ancestors' ashes if you want, so it's in the shape of like a dome also. It's my way of altering your perspectives, being more flexible in how you perceive things. And so to combine the breast and the stupa is like a little taboo, a little...
Have you ever had some pushback because you did that?
Maybe my works are so, it's abstract. On the abstract side.
Sure.
I've never had any problems. Actually, an interesting comment happened here in the United States. If some of you know, I have this large-scale breast cushion installation. You just take off your shoes and you go into a room full of this 200 breast cushions, And then I was giving a talk at the university in California, and it was a shot of that installation in a department store in a public space in Bangkok, and then there were children playing in it, and one of the audience said, "You probably cannot do this in the United States, having children play in boobs in in the public." But so that happened in Bangkok, and
But did you have any pushback besides that?
No.
I want to go back to what you mentioned at the beginning of your last answer about the idea of spirituality and religion or meditation. Can you talk about how that intertwined with your work, and both in the content but also in your practice as a practicing artist, and how important is spirituality for you?
In my studio in Bangkok, I don't have any assistants. I do work with foundries, seamstresses, or assistants who help stack paper for me. But at my home is my private space, and that's I really need it. A space for my own. It's a since I've grown older, I don't put music on the background. When I was young,
now your work makes more music, so.
And it is a meditative process for me. I can focus, and I think that portrays in the work also. One thing that I'm pleased with my work is that people do spend time with the art, and because you know the records of people going through museums, right? They're like how long one takes with one artwork. So that's it's even though my work has changed through the years, it's the core is the same. It's like I mentioned. It's about how you look at things, how one can change one perspective and be more flexible and eventually maybe alter attitudes.
I want to switch and talk about these works on this wall, it's in particular the one behind me and maybe the one to your right. And there is always something quite ethereal in your composition. There is very little, and yet your paintings say a lot of stories. I also look at them very often as landscapes, and not just because there is an architectural shape like the stupa, but I always find them quite interconnected, exactly like our surroundings. So I wonder if you ever consider them landscapes, and how also you think of the interplay between these different elements that are so distinct, and yet they talk very much to each other.
Actually, they are landscapes. When I was making these works, I was also invited to propose an idea for a music and art festival in Thailand called Wonder Fruit. It happens in December every year, so I was thinking of the outdoors, and I was proposing a breaststupa table, a 5-meter-long table, to be placed in the ancestral forest in Wonder Fruit. They've been growing this forest for some time. It's under the theory of that you find these plants that have been grown since Ice Age, and you source the seeds, and if you put it in the ground, they will make it. They will grow and they will survive, and so the table was going to be placed in that area. It's still ongoing, the process, but then so that's why I was thinking of the outdoors. I was thinking of the forest, and while making these paintings, so it sort of became like a landscape, and this one with the clouds appearing up there also, because the cloud and the breast, I started around 2007, 2008, just simple watercolors, and then a friend told me that there's a word in Bali Sanskrit called Payotara, and it means beholder of milk and beholder of water. So it's a concept that's been around forever, but then I subconsciously link them, and it somehow relates.
And have you ever done a work in the landscape, or like not just outdoors, but like thinking about the relationship with a specific landscape?
Outdoors, well, an installation is also like a landscape. Sure. So, or working on a specific site. For instance, the kinetic paper sculptures in the room next door started from 8 small sculptures that were placed in a small house on a small island in the Setoji Inland Sea for the Setoji Triennale in 2019, and it was an homage to the owner of the house, who was a carpenter of the of that particular carpentry line called Shiwakudaiku carpenters, who were making ships for the shogun. It was the shogun's headquarters there. So they were building homes, the beautiful homes, and I was given this house as a site. So that's a landscape, that's an environment, and that's a great
sideway to your sculptures, which
yes,
I hope you all saw next door. Now they're turned off, but I always found so surprising to appreciate your sculptural practice, because in a way it brings a different kind of joy into the picture, and I think there is a sense of joy and playfulness while maintaining your own vocabulary and your own lexicon. But I'm interested in hear you talk about sort of the connection between the body and the mechanical, right? The machine, and those sculptures over there really kind of represent this relationship. So tell us about that.
The 8 sculptures were on stands, and I placed them in the tokonoma, in the alcove in the tatami room. And then I came back home. I thought I can combine these with utensils and vessels around the house. And it became this installation called House Calls, coinciding with the period of COVID. And then I discovered along the way that the sculptures could move because of the needle in the middle, if they're tall or if they're round bottoms. And so instead of like placing them on the floor, as I first initially thought, we designed, the same designer as the kinetic base, Studio Make helped me design these shelves that if you step on the plate, it shakes up the joints of the shelves, and then the sculptures would shake. So it was about also fragility. It was also about instability. Playing the title House Calls, we were all called into our homes, but still unstable. Still, you're around things that you are familiar, but not familiar. So it was creating an environment, a landscape that's like, stirring up different layers of stories.
Yeah, and I can't help but thinking about a choreography for the body and a performance. So I wonder how much you control the way the vessels move versus you let them, occupy space and take control of space. And I also would love for you to talk about the actual object, the vessels, the water jars that you use, and what fascinates you about those containers.
It's totally physics. It's about science. This is a good art project for school children. So when we designed with the shelves, it was up to how much you jump on the plate to shake the shelves, and but we tested that it will not fall off. And with these kinetic bases, I wanted, my assignment was that I want different movements, different strengths, and because some of these are light, but some of the objects are heavy, so they need to have strength to move. And so David Schaefer from Studio Make, he came up with this great idea of just flipping the top, if you notice, and where you place the objects changes the movement of the objects. So actually, you can move them around if Mary allows.
Where's Mary?
Yes, but with the big table, we had to slice it up because otherwise it's the arms of the motor would not reach. Mm-hmm.
And it's right now they're of course turned off, but the most magical aspect is also this incredible sound that comes out of them, and I wonder how you think about that in terms of sound, landscape, and composition, and if you think about music in your work, and if you've ever used that before in your work.
I started exploring about the sensory perceptions from Nun Nom, the pillow installations that was around 2001, and because my works are tactile and using different materials, people want to touch them, so immediately, okay, you can touch these works, you can do whatever you want, and then move on to sound and movement, creating these soft sculptures that you walk around them, and you tap your feet or clap your hands and they will wiggle. It's called Pinaree Sanpitak. And then the breasts and clouds appear. So I created this piece called Anything Can Break that I mentioned about the flying cube origami with the glass breast clouds. And there are 16 sensors with connecting to 16 tracks. You walk underneath and you trigger the sound unknowingly at the beginning, but then gradually you learn where the sensors are, your body adjusts to it. And I presented it in Toledo Museum of Art, and the ballet director of the city came, and he was so intrigued with the piece, so he asked to do a composition underneath. So they had a performance underneath. So you have to remember where you can trigger the sound.
That sounds amazing. And that leads me to another question about, first of all, how the audience interacts with your work and respond to your work. Of course, we're in a very elegantly installed room, and I don't recommend you to interact with these paintings. But you have done also very different installations that really talk to so many different senses, not just, like they're really like, they pull the viewer in. Not just your beautiful work here, but the pillows and many other installations. So I wonder, in your creative process and in the act of making these sculptures and installations, what role does the audience play in your mind? Are you thinking about how they will interact with them? Not just touching them, of course, which we don't recommend, but it's like, how can you, really invite the audience in with all their senses?
Well, with these paintings, I mean, you interact with your vision, and actually it's with your whole body because you're here. But there are other works that comes full, like breast super cookery with the food. It's a project I started in 2005. So that was after Temporary Insanity, and of course, as a Thai, I need to incorporate food into my work. And I was, at first I thought I was going to use bread dough. I was baking bread a lot at that time, but it was not quite right. So one day I was making ceramics, and I thought, okay, I'll make these breast tuber shaped cooking molds. That would have been 4 or 5 years into breast tuber concept now. And then I invite different chefs to work with them, and it's my way of asking people back what they think about this form, and interpret them into food, and then we all share the food. Amina, you were the first to try in Bangkok, and we tested at home, and it's a project that is ongoing. Next year will be the 20th anniversary. It's a project dear to my heart, and I learned so much from the chefs, because the chefs are artists themselves, and it opens views to my own work.
Yeah, I wasn't that familiar with that part of your practice. It's so fascinating. What have you learned from chefs?
Well,
some secret recipes.
At first, I thought like it's molding food,
yeah.
but then they use it in so many ways, and because it's a breast tuber shape, so if you're gonna place it, how are you gonna place it? You're like put on a pile of salt, you have a stand, and then I develop tools and utensils along the way. And if you're in Singapore in January, we're doing 2 dinners with
yeah, and I was going to ask,
chef.
how does that collaboration manifest? Do you?
It depends. Sometimes it's I've had it for a tea ceremony. Exhibition opening for 200-300 people, a sit-down dinner, like a 4 or 5 course dinner, or and it's we've had over 40 events so far and never has been the same. So it excites me. It's something that with these collaborative projects, it's a way to let go. You know, as an artist, you're always like in full control, but then it's about trust. Sure. It's about learning and sharing. So
and have you collaborated with other experts in different fields besides the culinary one?
Yes, I was very fortunate to be able to work with glass masters, print and paper masters, textile makers.
And you mentioned your son is in fashion. Can you
Yes.
talk about that a little bit and your relationship and how you influence each other?
Yeah, Sean is a fashion designer. He studied in Antwerp, Belgium, and we collaborate on occasions. I guess it's because we like materials and we work on the body, and I can ask him to make things. So
always helpful.
So like for instance, the Mawata. After I did it, I used it in the roof installation. It was around the house, and he liked it so much. So he found a way to use it in his collection and sandwich it in between organza, and made outfits with them, so you can wear them. And then I had a project with Valentino. It was for January. The project started discussion in November, and we got these beautiful material from. We were trying to get it before the Christmas holidays, the iconograph design of Valentino, and so we made two large breast stupa Valentino breast for a charity show in Singapore. And Sean helped me align the patterns, and most recently was for the Sufi Museum in Paris last month. There's a new Sufi museum in Chateau. I was invited to make work in relation to the kashkuls, and also we did the breast stupa cookery for the opening. So the chef and a good friend knows Sean and suggested that he designs the tablecloths for the event. So he took elements from my paintings, which were red, and these patchworks, and about the dresses of the Sufi Samas.
Amazing.
Yeah. So. No, it's fun.
I want to come.
He was here 2 weeks ago.
So the next one is in Singapore?
Yes.
Okay. And I have one more question before opening up to the audience, if you have any questions. And this is a more general question, but you are an extremely successful artist. You have shown.
It's all relative.
in so many places, in so many parts of the planet. And yet, of course, you have practices very much grounded in Thailand and in the Southeast Asia. I wonder if you can just say a few words about how different it is for you to show your work in your own kind of a home versus in a beautiful place like here, but in many other places near and far. Or even to expand, like how much the context of the exhibition is important for you. Of course, we're just in a white cube space here. One might say there is no difference between this and Bangkok, but I'm sure there are many differences. So I'm curious to see if a city like New York influences you, or if it's not that relevant.
That was a question in discussion when I first Zoom meeting with Mary, and because I've shown with another gallery here, Tyler Rollins Fine Art, which was on 20th Street, but he was presenting works by Southeast Asian artists. And I worked with him from 2010 to 2017. And he was very instrumental in laying groundwork for American audience who don't know anything about Southeast Asian contemporary art. And so when Mary invited me, you were asking like, how would we relaunch in New York? But I don't think of it as making works for New York. It's what I'm doing at the moment, or what works with the site, and you know, for instance, like for Venice, for the Arsenale, I think it's here. I was thinking of the site, even though I didn't come to visit. I visited the gallery, but many years ago, and then knowing that there's the kinetic works that I want to present also, that's in the process. So it's not really about the city.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And do you think your work is perceived in a different way depending on where it's exhibited?
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Any curious comments that you've heard here?
So, no. I'm looking forward to hearing your
well, that's
your
a great
comments.
way of opening up to all of you.
That's
Otherwise, I could continue. I have a lot of questions, but I'm actually very curious to hear what you...
You were talking about the mechanization of like the vessels and the shelf. Do you go into the original concept with the movement as part of your vision, or do you build a shelf or a vessel and go, it would be really cool if it moved?
Did everyone hear that question?
No, when I gave the assignment to the designer, and he came to the studio, and he knew how my studio is, how I like my textures, and he made it so that because the shelves could be interchanged, because we had performance in there also, and it could be built in many ways depending on the site. It could be set up here also. So I like things to be as flexible and open as possible and interchangeable, and that's for instance like the sculptures in the next room. It could be laid out in a different pattern too. It could be spread out. It could be closer. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have the microphone for the next question.
Don't be shy. It's very special to have the artists here.
Well, I'm curious about the kind of literature you tap into. I'm sure when we talk about women's bodies, we see so much of it, but I think the literature is quite different from biology to philosophy. So maybe was there any reading that you came across that kind of inspired you to think differently or approach your work differently?
I'm inspired more by experience, like direct experience. I get inspired from words. If I was not going to be an artist, I would be like a simultaneous interpreter.
Wow, that is a very specific, different career. Okay.
But I get inspired by words, yeah, like by vocabulary, and it's how it affects directly. Mm-hmm.
Do you have a favorite writer? Favorite or like
Thai? Mm-hmm.
We take it, all of them. What about
I
Thai?
read
Yes.
a lot. I read a lot. Unfortunately, I read novels less now. But when I was growing up, Swani Sukontha, she also went to art school, and she's a writer. It's all about like different things happening in the family, in life, and one of her books is based on her son's addiction and it's unfortunately he passed, but it's a reader for school children. But she also was she was murdered and didn't live so long. But all her books are there. Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
I was wondering if you would want to elaborate more on...
I can't hear.
Okay, I'll just come. Hi. Can you elaborate more on the idea of caring for the work? I mean, it's implicit with the breasts, but then also the actual caring of some of the objects, the kind of implicit understanding that the work needs to be cared for in some ways, like literally and also conceptually. Do you know what I mean?
Materiality?
Like for me, the work is very much about, there's a call to care for it because of the fragility of it and also because of the tenuousness of the movement and the engagement with the viewer. And I just wondered if you could elaborate more on how the viewer engages in an understanding of caring, and then maybe on the backside, how the people who are literally caring for it, the installers, the curators, institutions, what it takes to care for that work, not just from a practical standpoint, but more of a, I think it's a...
Beth is Beth Lipman. She's a glass artist, and we recently met in Wisconsin last week. And so thank you so much for coming. I had the opportunity to work with glass, which is fragile, in Toledo, and I made a hammock, a glass hammock placed outdoors of the museum, and people can lay on it and swing it. So as a glass artist, maybe yourself, you wouldn't make that work that way, but I'm an outsider. So I challenge materials, I challenge things like that. And nothing lasts forever. So it's natural. I think each work invites in different manners, so people interacted with different ways, and each person has their own background, has their own way of thinking on each subject matter. So I think the approach is different for each individual.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Hi, I was very intrigued when you talked about your work being primarily about the female form or female embodiment, and then there was sort of this transition point where it became more about human embodiment. I was hoping you could talk just a little bit more about that pivot point or that transition.
I think I felt it when I was doing Temporary Insanity, those yellow and orange hue. It was, I had it in the breast shape and balls, so it's like breasts and balls. So it's like all gender, and it was about emotions. So it was not just about the woman. That was how I felt, and then after that I started the breast super cookery. So I worked with all sorts of chefs. So it really expanded the interaction with not it wasn't just about the woman. Mhm. And with projects like Breast Super Cookery, it could become very emotional. It could become very political. That was why I keep on with the project.
Yeah, and maybe as a continuation of that question, do you think that men and women have a very different reactions in front of your work? Or maybe we should ask the audience. But have you ever had a very different comment from a woman or a man, or it doesn't, I assume it doesn't matter, but I'm just curious to see if you had a very strong reaction maybe from a man standing in front of your paintings.
One of my best comments was from a gay man. He's a very good friend. It was for the Womanly Bodies sculpture, and the sculpture piece before that was called Confident Bodies. It was like torsos with breasts standing on steels, and then becoming these hanging installation, the Womanly Bodies. It's hollow in the middle, and it hangs from the ceiling with just one string and just barely touch the ground. And Edouard said he never felt anything about women, like he doesn't have any reaction. But then this one, he felt like he wanted to go inside.
Well, that's a perfect way of ending this conversation. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cecilia and Pinaree, and thank you. Every talk needs an audience, and you've been a fantastic one.